She attacked the pregnant wife in the hospital, but she had no idea who her father really was. The fluorescent lights of Lennox Metropolitan Hospital hummed faintly above the waiting room, casting everything in a cold, sterile glow, the kind of light that made healthy people look sick and sick people look like ghosts. Clara Ashford sat at the far end of the row of plastic chairs, one hand resting protectively over her swollen belly, the other gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles had turned white. 7 months pregnant, alone, again. She had stopped counting how many appointments Garrett had missed, stopped believing his excuses about traffic, meetings, emergencies that always seemed to happen at exactly the wrong moment. Now she simply came prepared for silence. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass partition across the room, pale and tired, a woman she barely recognized anymore. Somewhere behind the reception desk, a phone rang twice and stopped.
The clock on the wall ticked forward, 10:47 a.m. He was 47 minutes late. A mother and daughter sat 3 chairs away, whispering about nursery colors. A woman in scrubs walked past carrying a clipboard, her shoes squeaking against the linoleum floor. Everything felt muted, wrapped in that particular hospital quiet that always seemed to hold its breath. Clara scrolled through her phone without seeing anything, just moving her thumb to have something to do with her hands. Her wallpaper was still the ultrasound from her 20-week appointment, that tiny hand reaching toward nothing, frozen in black and white. She touched the screen gently, a habit she'd developed when the loneliness got too heavy. "You're my reason," she whispered, barely a breath. The automatic doors at the entrance slid open with a soft hiss, letting in a rush of cold October air. Clara didn't look up at first.
People came and went constantly in places like this, each carrying their own weight, their own worry. But something shifted in the room, a current, a disturbance in the careful quiet. The sound of heels against polished floor, sharp, deliberate, the kind of walk that expected the world to make way. Clara's body recognized the threat before her mind did. Her hand tightened over her belly, her pulse quickened. She looked up slowly, already knowing, somehow, who she would see. Vanessa Monroe stood near the reception desk, surveying the waiting room like a queen assessing her territory. Cream blazer, perfectly tailored, diamond studs catching the fluorescent light, dark hair swept back in a way that looked effortless, but probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent used to be. Her perfume arrived before her words did, jasmine and something sharp underneath, the kind of scent designed to be remembered. For a moment, Clara allowed herself to hope. Maybe Vanessa hadn't seen her. Maybe she was here for something else entirely. Some coincidence that would let Clara stay invisible, stay small, stay safe in her corner of the waiting room, where no one noticed her and nothing happened. Then their eyes met. Vanessa's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. It was the expression of someone who had just discovered an unexpected gift. Clara's heart stopped. She had seen Vanessa before, of course, in tabloid photos, always slightly blurred, always positioned just close enough to Garrett to raise questions. At charity galas, across crowded rooms, a face Clara trained herself not to look at directly. She had become expert at not seeing, at pretending the whispers weren't about her, at smiling through the pity in other women's eyes. But they had never been alone. They had never been face to face. Vanessa crossed the waiting room with the unhurried confidence of someone who had never been told no. Each step brought her closer. Clara felt the distance shrinking, felt the walls of the room contracting, felt the other patients look up and then quickly look away, sensing something they didn't want to witness.
The mother and daughter stopped whispering about nursery colors. Clara wanted to stand, wanted to leave, but her body had become something foreign, heavy and uncooperative, rooted to the chair by a weight that was more than pregnancy. It was the weight of 3 years of pretending, 3 years of swallowing words, 3 years of making herself smaller and smaller to fit into a life that had never really wanted her. Vanessa stopped directly in front of her, close enough that Clara could smell that perfume properly now, could see the tiny lines at the corners of her eyes that no amount of expensive cream could quite hide. Clara, her voice was soft, intimate, as if they were old friends meeting for lunch. What a surprise. Clara's throat tightened. I have an appointment. Of course you do.
Vanessa glanced at Clara's belly with an expression that might have been curiosity on anyone else. On her, it looked like calculation. The baby. How exciting for you. The way she said you made it sound like a diagnosis. Clara said nothing. She had learned that silence was safer than words with certain kinds of people. Words could be twisted, turned into weapons, thrown back at you in ways you never expected. Silence was a wall. Silence was protection. Silence was the only thing she had left. Vanessa tilted her head, a predator studying prey that refused to run. I have to say, she continued, lowering her voice to something meant just for Clara, I've always wondered about you. Garrett talks about you sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. She paused, usually after too much wine, usually when he's feeling guilty. Clara's nails dug into her palm. Don't react. Don't give her anything. He feels sorry for you, you know. Vanessa's smile widened. That's not the same as love. But I'm sure you figured that out by now. The words landed exactly where they were meant to land. Clara felt them sink in, cold and precise, finding the cracks she had spent years trying to seal. She had told herself it wasn't true, had told herself the distance in her marriage was temporary, fixable, something that would heal once the baby came. But hearing it spoken out loud, in this waiting room, by this woman, please leave me alone. Clara's voice came out smaller than she intended. Oh, I will. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her handbag, casual, unbothered. I just wanted to see you. The famous Clara, the woman who trapped Garrett with good timing and a convenient pregnancy. That's not, isn't it? Vanessa leaned closer, close enough that her perfume became overwhelming, close enough that Clara could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. You were nobody before him, a schoolteacher from Connecticut with a famous father who didn't want her. You saw an opportunity, and you took it. I can almost respect that. Clara's hands trembled. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. Vanessa's voice dropped even lower, a whisper meant to wound in private. I know he calls me when he says he's working late. I know he tells me things he's never told you. I know that this baby, she gestured toward Clara's belly with one manicured finger, is not going to save your marriage. It's just going to make the ending messier. Somewhere behind them, a nurse called a name. A door opened and closed. The world continued as if nothing was happening. Clara felt tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of her. He's done with you, Vanessa said and straight again, smoothing her blazer as if removing invisible dust. Everyone knows it except you. The last to know? Isn't that how it always goes? Clara stood. The movement was sudden, unexpected even to her. Her body had finally remembered how to move, how to fight, how to do something other than absorb abuse and smile. I need to go, she said, and her voice didn't shake this time. She tried to step around Vanessa, to escape toward the corridor, toward anywhere that wasn't here. But Vanessa moved with her, blocking the path, that smile never wavering. Running away. The amusement in her voice was cruel. That's so like you. Garrett said you were weak, but I didn't realize how much. Clara stopped. Something in her chest cracked open. Move.
Or what? Vanessa laughed softly, the kind of laugh designed to humiliate. What are you going to do, Clara? Tell someone? Make a scene? You've spent your whole life being invisible. You don't know how to be anything else. The other patients were definitely watching now. Clara could feel their eyes, their discomfort, their desperate wish to be anywhere else. No one moved to help. No one said anything. This was how it worked, she had learned. People looked away from things that made them uncomfortable. People pretended not to see. Please, Clara whispered. I just want to go to my appointment. Then go. Vanessa stepped slightly to the side, creating a gap just wide enough to squeeze through. But before you do, she caught Clara's arm. Not hard, just enough to stop her. I want you to know something. Vanessa's face was close now, her voice a blade wrapped in silk. Your father? The great Richard Davenport? I've met him, you know, at a fundraiser last spring. He was charming, powerful, everything you're not. Clara's breath caught. I asked him about you. Vanessa's grip tightened almost imperceptibly. Do you want to know what he said? Don't answer. Don't ask. Just walk away. But Clara's mouth betrayed her. What? Vanessa smiled, and it was the cruelest thing Clara had ever seen. He said, I don't have a daughter. The words hit like a physical blow. Clara felt them travel through her body, felt them reach that place inside her where she kept all the things she never talked about. The birthday cards with checks and no messages, the phone calls that never came, the father who had chosen absence over her for 27 years. She stood frozen in that terrible quiet. The clock ticked. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Somewhere, a phone rang. Clara stepped forward, finally breaking free of Vanessa's grip. Her legs felt weak, but she was moving. She was getting away. She was almost... Oh, and Clara? She should have kept walking. She should have ignored the voice, pushed through the doors, found the safety of the OB wing and its protocols and its nurses who would call her name and treat her like she mattered. But she stopped. She turned. Vanessa was watching her with an expression that had shifted, hardened into something darker. He's meeting me tonight, 8 o'clock, at the apartment he thinks you don't know about. She smoothed her hair with one hand, that terrible smile returning. I just thought you should know, since you're carrying his child and everything. The words hung in the air between them. Clara opened her mouth to respond, to scream, to do something. And then Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and something flickered across her face. Irritation, maybe, or recognition. She typed a quick response, slipped the phone back into her bag, and when she looked up again, her entire demeanor had changed. Colder, more dangerous. Actually, Vanessa said, stepping closer again, I don't think I'm done with you yet. Vanessa moved before Clara could react. One moment she was standing there, phone still in her hand, that cruel smile twisting her features. The next, her palm connected with Clara's shoulder. Not a slap, not a punch. Something worse. A shove. Deliberate, calculated. The kind of violence that could later be called an accident. Clara's body tilted backward. Her arms reached for something solid, found only air. Time stretched into something elastic and terrible as the floor rushed up to meet her. She hit the metal armrest first. The edge of the chair caught her abdomen, a sharp, unforgiving impact that sent a bolt of white-hot pain through her entire body. Then her back struck the linoleum, and the ceiling swam above her in a blur of fluorescent rectangles and acoustic tiles. Sound came back in fragments, her own voice crying out, the clatter of her phone skittering across the floor, a gasp from somewhere to her left, then screaming, not hers, someone else's, and the thunder of footsteps. Clara tried to breathe, but the air wouldn't come. Her hands found her belly instinctively, pressing against the curve of it, searching for movement, for any sign that he was still there, still safe, still alive. Please, please. please." The word repeated in her mind like a prayer she didn't know she remembered.
"Oh my God!" a woman's voice, high and panicked. "Someone call for help! She pushed her! I saw it! Get a nurse, now!" Clara's vision blurred. She could see shapes moving above her, faces she didn't recognize, hands reaching toward her, but not quite touching, as if they were afraid she might break further. The pain in her abdomen pulsed with each heartbeat, radiating outward in waves that made her want to vomit. She turned her head, searching through the chaos. Vanessa stood frozen near the entrance, her face drained of color. The predatory confidence had vanished, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Her phone lay forgotten on the floor beside her, the screen cracked from the impact. Their eyes met for one terrible second. Then Vanessa moved, not toward Clara, away. Her heels clicked rapidly against the floor as she retreated toward the automatic doors, her hand pressing against her mouth as if holding back something she didn't want to release. Ma'am, stop!" A security guard's voice cut through the noise, but the doors had already opened, already closed, and Vanessa was gone. Something small and metallic rolled across Clara's field of vision, a bracelet, silver, catching the harsh light, the initials VM engraved on its surface. Then a face appeared above her, a woman in blue scrubs, dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp with professional urgency. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I'm Margaret. I'm a nurse. Can you tell me your name?" Clara's lips moved, but no sound came out. "She's pregnant," someone said. 7 months, maybe more." "I can see that." Margaret's voice was calm but quick. She pressed 2 fingers against Clara's wrist, counting. "Ma'am, I need you to stay still. We're going to help you. Can you tell me where it hurts?" Clara managed one word. "Baby." Margaret's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "We're going to take care of both of you. I need you to breathe. Can you do that for me?" More footsteps, more voices. A stretcher appeared from somewhere, its wheels squeaking against the floor. Hands lifted Clara carefully, so carefully, but the movement still sent fresh waves of pain through her body. "Get her to OB emergency. Page Dr. Reyes. Blood pressure's dropping. Move, now." The ceiling tiles blurred into streaks of white as they rushed her down the corridor. Clara tried to focus on something, anything. The rhythm of the wheels, the pressure of Margaret's hand on her arm, the steady stream of medical terminology flowing around her like a language she couldn't quite translate. She thought she heard someone say placental. Someone else said trauma. The word fetal floated past her consciousness and disappeared. Then they were pushing through double doors into a room that was brighter, louder, full of machines and monitors and people in scrubs who moved with the controlled urgency of those who had seen emergencies before. On my count. 1, 2, 3. Clara was lifted again, transferred to a bed that felt cold even through her clothes. Hands worked around her, cutting fabric, attaching wires, pressing sensors against her skin. She heard beeping, the whir of machines powering on, voices calling numbers and instructions. "Fetal monitor, now." A woman appeared at her side, different from Margaret, older, with kind eyes and steady hands. "Clara, I'm Dr. Okonkwo. We're going to check on your baby, okay? I need you to try to stay calm." Stay calm, as if that were possible, as if her entire world hadn't just shattered on a waiting room floor. The cold gel of an ultrasound wand pressed against her belly. Dr. Okonkwo's eyes fixed on a screen that Clara couldn't see. Silence. The longest silence of Clara's life. Then, tum, 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 tum. A heartbeat, fast but present, alive. Clara's breath escaped in a sob. "He's okay? Please tell me he's okay?" Dr. Okonkwo's expression remained carefully neutral. "His heartbeat is present and active, but there are some irregularities we need to monitor closely. We're seeing signs of distress." "What does that mean?" "It means we need to run more tests." The doctor's voice was gentle but honest.
It means the next few hours are critical. The emergency OB unit had its own particular kind of quiet, not the absence of sound, but the careful muffling of it. Machines beeped in steady rhythms. Voices stayed low, deliberate, as if loud noises might tip the balance of something fragile. Clara lay in the narrow bed, sensors taped to her belly, watching the green line on the monitor trace her baby's heartbeat across the screen. Each small peak felt like a promise. Each slight dip felt like a threat. Tum, 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 tum. Still there. Still fighting. The door opened and a man entered, tall, dark hair streaked with early gray, wearing a white coat over blue scrubs. His face had the particular exhaustion of someone who had spent too many nights in places like this, but his eyes were alert, focused. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm Dr. Reyes. I'll be overseeing your care." Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. He pulled a rolling stool close to the bed and sat, bringing himself to her eye level. It was a small gesture, but Clara noticed it, the choice not to tower over her, not to speak down. "I've reviewed your initial scans," he said. "The impact caused what we call a partial placental abruption. That means a small portion of the placenta has separated from the uterine wall." The words hit Clara like physical blows. She gripped the bed rail. Will he? "The separation is minor," Dr. Reyes continued, his voice steady. "Right now, the blood flow to your baby appears adequate. His heartbeat is present and reactive. These are good signs. But..." He paused, and in that pause, Clara heard everything he wasn't saying. "But the situation is unstable. Any additional stress, physical or emotional, could cause the separation to worsen. If that happens, we may need to deliver the baby early to protect both of you. He's only 31 weeks. "I know." Dr. Reyes held her gaze. "That's why we're going to do everything possible to avoid that outcome. But I need you to understand the risks. Complete honesty is the only way I know how to do this." Clara felt tears sliding down her temples into her hair. She didn't bother wiping them away. "What do I need to do?" "Rest. Absolute rest. No stress, no movement unless necessary. We'll monitor the baby's heart rate continuously and run ultrasounds every few hours to track the abruption." He glanced at the monitor, then back at her. "Do you have someone we can call? A husband? Family member?" The word husband felt like a foreign language. "I tried calling him," Clara said quietly. "He's not answering." Something flickered across Dr. Reyes's face. Not judgment, something closer to understanding. "Is there anyone else?" Clara thought of her mother, dead 3 years now. Thought of the empty contact list on her phone. The friends who had drifted away after she married into a world that didn't welcome outsiders. Thought of the father whose phone number she had memorized but never dialed. "No," she said. "There's no one." Dr. Reyes nodded slowly. "Then we'll be your someone for now. You're not alone here, Clara." It was such a simple thing to say. Such a small kindness. But it cracked something open in Clara's chest, and she turned her face away so he wouldn't see her cry. He gave her a moment, then stood. "The nurse will bring you some water and help you get more comfortable. Try to rest. I'll be back to check on you in an hour." He was almost at the door when Clara spoke. "Dr. Reyes." He turned. "The woman who did this..." Clara's voice caught. "Did they find her?" His expression shifted, became more guarded. "Security is handling it." "They have footage from the waiting room cameras. The police have been notified." Footage? Everything was recorded. Whatever happened out there. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "There's a record of it." He left, and Clara was alone with the beeping of machines and the weight of what he had just told her. There was footage. The truth existed somewhere on a hard drive, captured in pixels and timestamps. Vanessa's hand on her shoulder, the shove, the fall, all of it preserved in the cold, indifferent memory of a security camera. Clara closed her eyes and tried to focus on the only sound that mattered. Tum, 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 tum. Still there. The door opened again, Margaret this time, carrying a clipboard and a cup of water. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Clara admitted. Margaret nodded as if this were the most reasonable answer in the world. "That's allowed." She set the water on the bedside table and checked the monitors, making small notes on her clipboard. "I need to let you know that risk management has opened a file on the incident. They'll want to speak with you when you're feeling up to it." Risk management? Standard procedure when there's an assault on hospital property, especially involving... Margaret hesitated. "Especially in circumstances like these. They've already pulled the security footage. Several patients and staff members have provided statements." Clara absorbed this. "And the one? Vanessa?" "She fled the scene, but she left something behind." Margaret reached into her pocket and held up a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside was the silver bracelet, the initials VM glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Police have been notified. It won't be hard to find her." Something that might have been relief moved through Clara's chest, or maybe it was just exhaustion. "There's one more thing," Margaret said, her voice shifting slightly. "When you were admitted, we pulled your emergency contact information from your file." "Your husband didn't answer." "I know, but your secondary contact did." Clara's heart stuttered. "My secondary contact?" Margaret glanced at her clipboard. "Richard Davenport. He's listed as your father." The room seemed to tilt. I don't remember putting him on the form. It was added 3 years ago when you first registered with our OB department." Margaret's eyes were kind but searching. "He's been notified, Clara. He said he's on his way." Richard Davenport received the call at 11:23 a.m. in his corner office on the 42nd floor of Davenport Capital. The Manhattan skyline stretched endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a kingdom of glass and steel that he had spent 40 years building. On his desk, 3 screens displayed market movements in real time. A stack of contracts awaited his signature. His assistant had just reminded him of a lunch meeting with the Singapore delegation. Then his phone rang, and the caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Davenport, this is Lennox Metropolitan Hospital calling about your daughter, Clara Ashford." He didn't move, didn't breathe. "There's been an incident. She's stable but in serious condition. You're listed as her emergency contact. We thought you should know." The words entered his ears but seemed to travel a great distance before reaching his brain. Daughter, Clara, incident, serious condition. What happened? "I'm not able to provide details over the phone, sir, but she's in our OB emergency unit. The doctors are with her now." The line went dead, and Richard sat frozen in his leather chair, staring at the phone in his hand as if it had transformed into something unrecognizable. Clara, the name he had trained himself not to think about. The daughter he had walked away from 27 years ago, when walking away had seemed like the rational choice, the strategic choice, the choice that preserved his trajectory and protected his reputation, and cost him only something small. Only something small. He had told himself that for decades, had repeated it like a mantra every time a birthday passed uncelebrated, every time a milestone went unwitnessed, every time he signed a check and told himself that money was a form of presence, a form of caring, a form of love. He had lied. "Lucas?" His assistant appeared in the doorway within seconds. "Sir? Cancel everything. Sir? Cancel the Singapore lunch. Cancel the 3 o'clock. Cancel everything for the rest of the day." Richard was already standing, reaching for his coat. "Get my car. I need to go to Lennox Metropolitan Hospital." Lucas knew better than to ask questions when Richard used that tone. "I'll have it waiting downstairs in 2 minutes." The elevator ride felt endless. The lobby stretched like a marathon. The car was there, sleek and black, and Richard climbed into the back seat before the driver could open the door. Lennox Metropolitan. Fast. The city blurred past the tinted windows. Richard stared at his hands, the hands that had signed billion-dollar deals, that had shaken the hands of presidents and prime ministers, that had built and destroyed fortunes. These same hands had signed away a daughter. He remembered the day with terrible clarity. 30 years old, promising career, family legacy to protect, and a woman named Elena Vasconcelos, a software engineer he'd met at a conference in Boston, whose smile had made him forget everything he was supposed to want. When she told him she was pregnant, his family had intervened. His father, cold and practical. His mother, concerned about appearances. The attorneys with their paperwork and their explanations of why this needed to go away quietly.
Elena had refused to terminate the pregnancy, had refused the money, had refused to disappear. So Richard had disappeared instead. He had moved to New York, cut all contact, buried himself in work until the guilt became background noise. He sent checks every birthday, his only concession to conscience, but never a card, never a call, never a visit. When Elena died 3 years ago, he had learned about it from a news article. When Clara married Garrett Ashford, he had learned about it from the society pages. He had watched his daughter's life from a distance, like a stranger reading about someone else's family, telling himself it was better this way, telling himself she was better off without him. And now she was in a hospital, alone and afraid, and he was racing across Manhattan in the back of a car, 27 years too late for everything that mattered. The hospital corridors smelled like antiseptic and anxiety.
Richard walked past the reception desk, past the waiting room where security tape marked off a section of chairs, past nurses who glanced at him with that particular expression people used when they recognized power but didn't know its name. Lucas had made the calls. The hospital administrator had been notified. Doors opened before Richard reached them. But none of that mattered when he finally stood outside the glass window of room 412 and saw her. Clara. She lay in the narrow bed, pale against the white sheets, wires trailing from her body to machines that beeped with the rhythm of 2 lives hanging in balance. Her eyes were closed. Her hands rested on her belly, fingers spread protectively over the curve of it. She looked so much like Elena that Richard's breath caught in his throat. He stood there for a long moment, frozen in the doorway, feeling every year of absence pressing down on him like physical weight. He had walked into boardrooms full of hostile investors without flinching. He had navigated financial crises that would have broken lesser men. But this terrified him in a way nothing else ever had. What right did he have to be here, coat and his polished shoes? And her expression shifted through a dozen emotions too quickly for him to read. Clara? Why are you here? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper, but the words cut through him like glass. The hospital called. You were listed. I was listed. He stopped. Started again. They said you were hurt. I know what they said. Clara's eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, but there was something fierce in them now. I asked why you're here. You don't know me. You've never known me. So why would you come now? Richard stepped into the room. Each footstep felt like walking through water. Because I should have come before. Before what? Before 27 years of silence? Before Mom's funeral that you didn't attend? So he kept them at his sides. I don't have an excuse, he said. I don't have an explanation that will make any of this okay. I made choices, Clara. Terrible choices. And I've spent 3 decades telling myself they were the right ones, because admitting otherwise would mean... He stopped. Would mean what? Richard looked at his daughter, this stranger who had his mother's eyes and Elena's strength and a whole life he had never been part of, and felt the architecture of his denial finally collapse. Would mean I wasted something irreplaceable. Would mean I destroyed the only thing that ever really mattered. Clara stared at him. The monitors beeped. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang. You don't get to say that now, she whispered. You don't get to walk in here and say the words you should have said when I was 5, or 10, or 20. You don't get to be my father just because I'm lying in a hospital bed. I know. Then why are you here? Richard moved to the chair beside her bed. He didn't sit, didn't presume that right, but he lowered himself to the edge of it, bringing his eyes level with hers. Because you needed someone, he said quietly, and your husband isn't here, and your mother is gone. And I know I'm the last person who deserves to be in this room right now. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving." Clara's chin trembled. She turned her face away toward the window, where gray light filtered through the blinds. "You should have come 27 years ago. I know. You should have come to her funeral. I know. You told someone at a fundraiser that you didn't have a daughter." Richard closed his eyes.
The words struck exactly where they were meant to. "Who told you that?" "The woman who put me in this bed." Silence, long and terrible. When Richard opened his eyes, Clara was looking at him again. Her expression had shifted, still guarded, still wounded, but with something else underneath, something that might have been exhaustion too deep for anger. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I don't know how to have a father after a lifetime of not having one." "Neither do I." Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "But I'd like to learn, if you'll let me." Clara didn't answer. She turned back toward the window, her hand tightening over her belly. The monitor beeped. Tum, 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 tum. Still there. "Stay," Clara said finally, without looking at him. "Don't talk. Don't try to fix anything. Just stay." Richard nodded, though she couldn't see it. He pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down, and for the first time in 27 years, he did exactly what his daughter asked.
The hospital moved in rhythms that Clara was beginning to learn. Every 2 hours, a nurse came to check her vitals. Every 4 hours, Dr. Reyes appeared with an ultrasound machine. Every heartbeat on the monitor was a small victory. Every dip in the green line, a moment of terror that passed and returned and passed again. Richard stayed. He didn't speak much, honoring her request with a discipline that surprised her. He sat in the chair by the window, answering emails on his phone, occasionally stepping into the hallway to take calls in a low voice she couldn't quite hear. But he always came back, always resumed his position, a presence she hadn't asked for and didn't know how to feel about. It was late afternoon when Margaret Chen knocked softly on the door. "Clara, there's someone here to see you, from Risk Management." Clara glanced at Richard, who looked up from his phone with an expression of careful neutrality. "Should I step out?" he asked. Clara hesitated. Part of her wanted him gone, wanted this strange, uncomfortable reunion to pause so she could process what had happened without his weight in the room. But another part, smaller and more fragile, didn't want to be alone. "Stay," she said quietly. "Please." Margaret stepped aside, and a woman entered, late 50s, gray hair cut short and practical, wearing a blazer over her scrubs. She carried a tablet and a folder thick with papers. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm Helen Cartwright, Director of Risk Management. I'm sorry to disturb you during your recovery, but given the circumstances, we need to move quickly." Clara nodded. "What do you need from me?" Helen pulled a chair to the opposite side of the bed from Richard and sat down, her movements efficient but not unkind. "I need to inform you of what we know so far, and then I'll need your statement." She opened the tablet, and Clara caught a glimpse of frozen video footage on the screen. The incident in the waiting room was captured by 3 separate security cameras. "We have a clear record of what occurred." Clara's throat tightened. "You saw it?" "I did." Helen's voice was carefully neutral, but something in her eyes softened. "I've reviewed the footage multiple times. What happened to you was not an accident, Mrs. Ashford. It was a deliberate assault." The word hung in the air. Assault. Such a clinical term for something that had shattered her world. "The woman who attacked you, Vanessa Monroe, fled the scene before security could detain her. However, she left behind a personal item." Helen reached into her folder and produced a photograph of the silver bracelet, now sealed in an evidence bag. The initials match her name. Combined with the video footage and witness statements, we have more than enough to proceed. Proceed with what? The police have been notified. A formal report has been filed. Given the severity of the incident, the assault of a pregnant woman resulting in potential harm to the fetus, criminal charges are likely. Clara absorbed this slowly. Criminal charges, police, reports. the machinery of justice grinding into motion. "And the hospital?" Richard's voice cut through her thoughts. It was the first time he had spoken since Helen entered. "What is the hospital's position?" Anne turned toward him. Her expression shifted slightly as she registered who he was. Clara saw the moment of recognition, the subtle straightening of posture, the recalculation behind her eyes. "Mr. Davenport, I wasn't aware you were involved." "I'm her father." The words landed strangely in Clara's chest. Her father, as if it were a simple thing, as if 27 years of absence could be erased by a single sentence. Helen nodded slowly. "The hospital's position is clear. An assault occurred on our property. A patient was harmed.
We are cooperating fully with law enforcement and conducting our own internal review to ensure this never happens again." "And the footage," Richard pressed, "who has access to it?" "It's been secured. Chain of custody has been established. Only authorized personnel and law enforcement will have access." Helen paused. "I understand you may have concerns about privacy, given your profile. I can assure you that we take confidentiality extremely seriously." "My concern is my daughter's safety," Richard said quietly, "not my profile." Clara looked at him. There was something in his voice she hadn't heard before, a rawness that didn't match the polished businessman she had seen in magazine photographs. Helen turned back to Clara. "Mrs. Ashford, when you're feeling up to it, I'll need a formal statement from you. What was said before the assault, what you remember of the physical contact, any prior relationship with the attacker." "She's my husband's..." Clara stopped. The word stuck in her throat like broken glass. "She's been involved with my husband, an affair I found out through the tabloids." Helen's pen moved across her tablet. "And today was the first time you'd spoken directly?" "Yes." "What was said?" Clara closed her eyes. The waiting room came back to her in fragments. The smell of Vanessa's perfume, the click of her heels, the words that had been designed to wound. "She said my husband was done with me. She said my father..." Clara glanced at Richard, then away. "She said things meant to hurt. And then I tried to leave, and she pushed me." "Did she say anything as she pushed you?" Clara thought back. The moment had been so fast, so chaotic, but there had been something. She said she wasn't done with me yet. Right before it happened, she said she wasn't done. Helen nodded, making another note. "That's consistent with what we see on the footage. The assault appears premeditated, not a spontaneous reaction." The door opened, and Dr. Reyes entered with his ultrasound cart. He paused when he saw the room's occupants. "I'm sorry, should I come back?" "No," Clara said quickly. "Please, I need to know how he's doing." Helen stood. "I'll give you privacy for the examination. We can continue this later, Mrs. Ashford. There's no rush." She gathered her materials and left, closing the door softly behind her. Dr. Reyes approached the bed, his presence somehow calming. "How are you feeling? Any cramping? Bleeding?" "Some cramping," Clara admitted. "Not as bad as before." He nodded, pulling on gloves. "Let's take a look." The cold gel, the pressure of the wand, the screen flickering to life with shapes that only a trained eye could interpret. Clara watched Dr. Reyes's face as he studied the images. His expression gave nothing away, the practiced neutrality of someone who delivered both good news and bad with the same steady demeanor. "The abruption hasn't progressed," he said finally. "In fact, it may have stabilized slightly." "The baby's heart rate is strong and reactive." Clara exhaled. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. "That's good news," Dr. Reyes continued. "But we're not out of the woods. I want to keep you here for at least 48 hours of continuous monitoring. Any change in your condition, any increase in pain or bleeding, and we reassess immediately. And if things stay stable, then we continue monitoring. The goal is to keep this baby inside as long as safely possible. Every day matters at this stage." He cleaned the gel from her belly and made notes on his tablet. As he worked, Clara felt Richard's eyes on her, watching, waiting, present in a way that felt both foreign and strangely necessary. "Dr. Reyes," Clara said quietly, "thank you for being honest with me." He looked up, and something softened in his expression. "Honesty is the least you deserve, Clara.
You're fighting for 2 lives right now. You should know exactly what you're fighting against." He left, and the room fell silent. Richard shifted in his chair. He seems competent. He is. Another silence. The monitor beeped its steady rhythm. "Clara." Richard's voice was hesitant, uncertain, emotion she hadn't thought him capable of. "The woman who did this, Vanessa Monroe, I want you to know that I'm going to make sure she faces consequences, real consequences, not because of who I am, but because of what she did to you." Clara turned to look at him. "How?" "By making sure the evidence isn't buried, by making sure the right people see what happened, by—" "Not revenge." Richard stopped. "I don't want revenge," Clara said. "I don't want her destroyed in some public spectacle. I just want—" She trailed off, searching for the right words. "I want the truth to matter. I want what she did to have consequences, real ones, not the kind that gets swept under rugs because someone has money or connections." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," he said finally. "Then that's what we'll do. The truth. Consequences. Nothing more, nothing less." Clara nodded slowly. It wasn't forgiveness. She wasn't sure she was capable of that yet, with him or with anyone. But it was something. A starting point. The monitor beeped. Tum-tum-tum-tum. Still there. Still fighting. Night had fallen over Manhattan when Garrett Ashford finally appeared. Clara had drifted into a shallow sleep, the kind that came in hospital rooms, never quite deep enough to feel like rest, always interrupted by the soft sounds of machines and footsteps in the corridor. She woke to the sound of voices outside her door. Low, tense, familiar. "I don't care who you are, you can't be here." "She's my wife, I have every right." "You lost that right when you didn't answer your phone for 8 hours." Clara's eyes opened fully. Richard's voice, controlled but hard, and Garrett's, defensive, wounded, playing the victim as he always did. She pressed the button to raise the head of her bed, wincing at the pull in her abdomen. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap she could see them. Richard blocking the entrance, Garrett standing in the corridor with his tie loosened and his hair disheveled, looking like a man who had come from a long day of meetings, not a crisis. He held flowers. Of course he held flowers. "I didn't know," Garrett was saying. "My phone was on silent. I was in meetings all day. When I finally saw the messages—" "You had 12 missed calls," Richard said flatly. 12. From this hospital, from your wife's phone, from numbers you didn't recognize, and you ignored all of them." "I didn't ignore them. I didn't see them." "There's no difference." Clara watched this exchange with a strange detachment. Part of her wanted to feel something, anger, betrayal, even relief that he had finally come. But there was only numbness, a vast, hollow space where her marriage used to be. "Let him in," she said. Both men turned. Richard's expression flickered with something that might have been disappointment, but he stepped aside. Garrett entered slowly, clutching the flowers like a shield. Up close, Clara could see the strain in his face, the tight set of his jaw, the shadows under his eyes. He looked, she realized, like a man who had been caught. "Clara," his voice cracked. "My God, Clara, I came as soon as I heard. Are you okay? Is the baby—" "The baby is stable," she said, "for now." He approached the bed, reaching for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't reach back either. His fingers found hers, cold and trembling. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have been here. I should have—" "Where were you?" The question hung in the air. Garrett's eyes darted toward Richard, who had moved to the window but was clearly still listening. "I was at the office. I told you I was in meetings." "Where were you really, Garrett?" He went pale. The flowers drooped in his grip. "Clara," she told me. Clara's voice was steady, eerily calm. "Vanessa." Before she pushed me, she told me you were meeting her tonight. 8 o'clock, at the apartment I'm not supposed to know about. The silence that followed was suffocating. Garrett's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's not—" "She was lying. She's unstable, Clara. You can't believe anything she says. She pushed me because she wanted to hurt me, but she told me the truth because she wanted to destroy me. Clara pulled her hand away from his. Those are different things. Clara, please, his voice broke. I made mistakes, I know that, but I love you. I love our baby. We can fix this. We can... Fix what? Clara's calm finally cracked. Fix the fact that your mistress nearly killed our son? Fix the fact that you weren't here? Fix 3 years of me pretending not to know, not to see, not to feel anything because feeling would have meant admitting that my marriage was a lie?
Garrett stepped back as if she had struck him. Richard spoke from the window, his voice quiet but cutting. I think you should leave. Stay out of this, Garrett spun toward him. You don't get to have an opinion. You abandoned her. You're not her father. You're just a stranger with a checkbook. Richard didn't flinch. You're right. I was absent. For 27 years I was absent. But I'm here now, and I'm not the one who put her in this bed. Neither am I. No, you just brought the woman who did into her life. Richard moved closer, his presence suddenly filling the room. You funded her, encouraged her, made her feel entitled to something that was never hers. And when your wife needed you, when she was bleeding on a waiting room floor, you were unreachable. So yes, I think you should leave. Garrett looked between them, Clara in the bed, pale and exhausted, and Richard standing like a wall between them. Something shifted in his expression. The defensive anger drained away, replaced by something smaller. Clara, his voice was barely a whisper. Please, don't do this. Clara looked at the man she had married, the man she had believed in, defended, made excuses for, the man who had let her become invisible in her own life. I'm not doing anything, she said. I'm just finally seeing clearly. Garrett stood frozen for a long moment. Then he set the flowers on the bedside table, a gesture that felt more like surrender than offering, and walked to the door. He paused at the threshold. I never meant to hurt you, he said, without turning around. I know that doesn't matter, but I need you to know. Then he was gone, and the door clicked shut behind him. Clara stared at the flowers. White roses, her favorite. He remembered that, at least. Richard returned to his chair, moving slowly, as if giving her space to fall apart. But Clara didn't fall apart. She simply sat there, looking at the roses, feeling the weight of something ending. I knew, she said quietly. I knew for months, maybe longer. I just didn't want to see it. That's not your fault, isn't it? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I chose to be blind. I chose to be small. I chose to be the kind of woman who doesn't make scenes, who doesn't ask questions, who doesn't demand answers she doesn't want to hear. You chose to survive, Richard said, in a world that wasn't built for you. That's not weakness, Clara. That's adaptation. She turned to look at him, this stranger who shared her blood. You sound like you know something about that. I know about building walls, he said slowly. I know about protecting yourself from truths you're not ready to face. I know about waking up one day and realizing the walls became a prison. He paused. And I know about trying to tear them down when it feels like it's too late. Clara considered this. The monitor beeped.
The city hummed outside the window. Is it? She asked. Too late? Richard was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he said finally, but I'm going to find out. The hospital at night was a different world. The corridors grew quieter, the footsteps softer. The fluorescent lights seemed to dim, casting everything in a gentler glow. Through the window of her room, Clara could see Manhattan glittering in the darkness. 1,000,000 windows, 1,000,000 lives, carrying on as if nothing had happened. Richard had finally stepped out to make phone calls and check on his assistant, who was apparently coordinating something she didn't fully understand. Clara didn't ask. She was too tired to ask. It was past midnight when the door opened softly. Dr. Reyes. He was still in his scrubs, though his white coat was gone. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there that morning, the marks of a long shift, too many patients, not enough rest. "I saw your light was on," he said quietly.
Couldn't sleep? Clara shook her head. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that waiting room. He nodded, understanding without requiring explanation. He pulled the rolling stool to her bedside and sat, the same way he had that morning, bringing himself to her level, never towering. "That's normal," he said. "Trauma doesn't care about logic. Your brain is trying to process what happened, and sometimes that means replaying it, over and over. Does it stop? Eventually, with time, with help." He paused. "There are people you can talk to, counselors who specialize in this kind of thing. The hospital can arrange it, if you want." Clara considered this. A counselor. Someone professional, trained to navigate the wreckage of broken lives. It sounded both necessary and exhausting. "Maybe," she said, "after the baby is safe. I can't think about anything else right now." "That's fair." Dr.
Reyes glanced at the monitor, checking the numbers with the automatic reflex of someone who had done it thousands of times. Speaking of which, his numbers look good, stable. He's a fighter, your boy. He gets that from his grandmother, Clara said, surprising herself. My mom, she was the strongest person I've ever known. Tell me about her. It wasn't a clinical question. It wasn't small talk. It was an invitation, offered quietly, without pressure. Clara found herself talking about Elena Vasconcelos, who had come to America from Sao Paulo with nothing but a degree in software engineering and a determination to build a life on her own terms. About how she had refused money from Richard, refused to be erased, refused to let Clara grow up feeling like a mistake. She worked 2 jobs for years, Clara said, coding during the day, cleaning offices at night. She never complained. She just did what needed to be done. She sounds remarkable. She was. Clara's voice caught. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. By the time they found it, it was everywhere. I'm sorry. I was with her at the end. She held my hand and told me she was proud of me. And then she was just gone. Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I've never told anyone that, not even Garrett. Why not? Clara thought about it. Because he never asked, not like you just did, not like he actually wanted to know. Dr. Reyes was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Some people don't know how to hold space for other people's pain. It's not always malice. Sometimes it's just inability. They never learned how. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to help you understand. He leaned forward slightly. You're not responsible for other people's limitations, Clara. You're only responsible for recognizing them and deciding what to do about it. Clara let those words settle. They felt true in a way that hurt. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Why are you here? It's past midnight. Your shift must have ended hours ago. Dr. Reyes hesitated. For the first time since she'd met him, he seemed uncertain. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him look suddenly younger, more human. There's something about your case that I can't let go of. Maybe it's because of what happened to you, the violence of it, the injustice. Maybe it's because you're here alone, and that bothers me more than it should. My father is here. A father you haven't spoken to in 27 years. That's not the same as not being alone. Clara couldn't argue with that. I became a doctor because I wanted to help people, Dr. Reyes continued. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that helping isn't just about medicine. It's about presence. It's about making sure someone doesn't feel like they're drowning in the dark. He met her eyes. You looked like you were drowning, so I came back. Clara felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction. She was too exhausted, too broken for that, but something adjacent to it. Recognition, gratitude, the simple relief of being seen. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet. I still have to keep you and that baby healthy for at least another few weeks." "Is that your professional opinion?" "It's my professional goal." A small smile crossed his face. "I don't like losing." The door opened and Margaret Shen appeared with a tray of medication. "Dr. Reyes, I thought you went home hours ago." "I was just checking on Mrs. Ashford." Margaret's expression suggested she knew exactly why he was really here, but she said nothing. She simply administered Clara's medication, checked the monitors, and made notes on her chart. "Your father is in the family waiting area," she told Clara. "He asked me to tell you he'll be back in the morning." "He's not going home?" "Apparently not."
He had his assistant bring a change of clothes and a laptop. Margaret raised an eyebrow. He seems committed. Clara didn't know what to say to that. Committed. After 27 years of absence, her father was sleeping in a hospital waiting room. When Margaret left, Dr. Reyes stood. "Try to get some rest," he said. "Your body needs it. The baby needs it." "Dr. Reyes?" He paused at the door. "What you said about drowning in the dark," Clara said. "How do you know what that looks like?" His hand rested on the doorframe. For a moment, he seemed to be deciding how much to reveal. "Because I've been there," he said finally, "a long time ago, and someone pulled me back. So now I try to do the same for others." He left before she could respond, and Clara was alone with the beeping of machines and the glittering city beyond the window. She thought about her mother, who had fought alone, about Richard, who was sleeping in a waiting room, trying to make up for lost time. About Garrett, who had walked away when things got hard. About Dr. Reyes, who had come back at midnight just to make sure she wasn't drowning. About Vanessa, somewhere in the city, probably already spinning her version of events. And about her son, whose heartbeat was steady on the monitor, who didn't know yet about the complicated world he was about to enter. Toom, 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 toom. "I'm going to be better," Clara whispered to him. "Better than what I came from. Better than what was done to me. I promise." The city hummed, the machines beeped, and somewhere in the space between waking and sleep, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Small, fragile, uncertain, but there. Morning came slowly to Lennox Metropolitan Hospital, gray light seeping through the blinds like something reluctant to arrive. Clara woke to the sound of footsteps in the corridor and the soft beeping of her monitor, sounds that had become strangely familiar over the past 36 hours. Her body ached in ways she was learning to catalog. The dull throb in her abdomen, the stiffness in her back from lying in one position too long, the exhaustion that sleep never quite erased. But the baby's heartbeat was steady. Tum, tum, tum. That was what mattered. Richard appeared shortly after 7, freshly shaved and wearing a different suit, navy this time, impeccably pressed. If he had spent the night in a waiting room chair, there was no evidence of it. He carried 2 cups of coffee and set one on her bedside table. "I wasn't sure if you could have caffeine," he said. "The nurse said 1 cup was fine." Clara reached for it, grateful for the warmth against her palms. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a moment, sipping coffee, watching the city wake up beyond the window. It was strange, Clara thought, how quickly this had become routine. A father she barely knew, sitting beside her hospital bed, sharing morning coffee as if they had done it 1,000 times before. A knock at the door interrupted the silence. Helen Cartwright entered, tablet in hand, looking like a woman who had been working through the night. Behind her came a man Clara didn't recognize, tall, thin, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and a hospital ID badge that marked him as security director. "Mrs. Ashford? Mr. Davenport." Helen nodded at each of them. "I apologize for the early visit, but we have updates that couldn't wait." Clara set down her coffee. "What kind of updates?" Helen gestured to the man beside her. "This is Thomas Brennan, our director of security. He's been leading the internal investigation."
Thomas stepped forward, his expression professionally neutral. Mrs. Ashford, we've completed our review of the security footage and witness statements. The evidence is comprehensive. He turned his tablet toward her. On the screen was a frozen image from the waiting room camera. Clara seated in her chair, Vanessa standing over her, one hand extended toward Clara's shoulder. We have 3 camera angles, Thomas continued. This one shows the initial approach and verbal confrontation. The second captures the physical contact from a side angle. The third, he swiped to another image, shows the aftermath. You on the floor, other patients reacting, Miss Monroe fleeing the scene. Clara stared at the images. Seeing it from the outside was different from living it. The woman on the screen looked so small, so vulnerable. She barely recognized herself. We've collected statements from 9 witnesses, Helen added. 4 patients, 3 nurses, 2 administrative staff members. Their accounts are consistent. Miss Monroe initiated both the verbal and physical confrontation. You made no aggressive movements. The push was deliberate. What about Vanessa's statement? Richard asked. She hasn't provided one, Thomas replied. She was served notice to appear for a formal interview yesterday evening.
Her attorney responded this morning with a letter claiming she's too distressed to participate. Too distressed, Clara repeated flatly. Her attorney also submitted a counter-narrative, Helen said carefully, claiming that you provoked her with inflammatory statements about her relationship with your husband, and that the physical contact was an involuntary reflex to verbal abuse. Clara felt something cold move through her chest. That's not what happened. We know. Helen's voice was firm. The footage has audio, Mrs. Ashford. We can hear everything that was said. Your voice, her voice, the content of her statements to you. She paused, including what she said about your father. Richard went very still. The footage doesn't support her narrative, Thomas continued. It directly contradicts it. The police have been provided with copies, along with our incident report. The district attorney's office has opened a preliminary investigation. Clara absorbed this. The machinery of justice, grinding forward. Evidence preserved. Statements collected. The truth documented in pixels and timestamps. What happens now? She asked. Helen exchanged a glance with Thomas. That depends on several factors. The police investigation will proceed independently. The DA will decide whether to file formal charges. Our role is to ensure that the hospital's documentation is thorough and unimpeachable. And Miss Monroe? She's been barred from hospital property pending the investigation. A formal trespass notice was delivered to her residence this morning. Helen paused. We've also implemented additional security measures in the waiting areas. Panic buttons, additional camera coverage, staff training on identifying potential confrontation situations. Clara blanked. You did that already? It was necessary, Helen said simply. What happened to you should never have been possible. Failures in our system allowed a vulnerable patient to be assaulted in a public area. We're correcting those failures. There was no grandiosity in her voice, no corporate speak about learning opportunities or process improvements, just a straightforward acknowledgement that something had gone wrong and was being fixed. Thank you, Clara said quietly. Helen nodded. There's one more thing. The police have requested a formal interview with you. They can come here whenever you're feeling up to it. There's no pressure. It can wait until after your condition stabilizes. Clara looked at Richard, then back at Helen. I'd rather do it sooner. I want this documented while it's still fresh. I'll arrange it for this afternoon, if that works. After Helen and Thomas left, Richard stood at the window for a long moment, his back to the room. She said something about your father, he said finally, on the tape. What did she say? Clara hesitated. The words still burned. She told me she met you at a fundraiser, that she asked about me. Clara's voice was steady, but it cost her. She said you told her you didn't have a daughter. Richard didn't turn around. His shoulders seemed to bow under a weight Clara couldn't see. I didn't say that. It doesn't matter. It does. He turned now, and his face looked older than it had moments ago. I was at that fundraiser. I remember her, a woman with sharp eyes and too many questions. She asked if I had children. I said I had a son. Clara waited. I didn't mention you because I never mention you. Not because you don't exist, but because—" he stopped, struggling with words that didn't come easily. "Because I forfeited the right to claim you. I walked away, and every time someone asks about my family, I feel that absence like a missing limb, so I don't talk about it, I talk around it. That's not the same as saying I don't exist. No, but it's close enough." Richard's voice was raw.
She heard what she wanted to hear, used it as a weapon against you, and I gave her that weapon by being a coward. Clara didn't know what to say. The truth was too complicated for simple responses. He hadn't denied her, exactly, but he hadn't claimed her either. 27 years of being a missing limb, a ghost in his family tree. "I can't forgive you," she said finally. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I understand you a little better now." Richard nodded slowly. "That's more than I deserve." The monitor beeped. The city hummed. And somewhere in the silence between them, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but the beginning of understanding. The police interview came and went. 2 detectives, a woman named Rodriguez and a man named Park, asked careful questions and took careful notes. Clara told them everything: the waiting room, the words, the push, the fall. They showed her still images from the security footage and asked her to confirm what she saw.
Yes, that was Vanessa Monroe. Yes, that was the moment she pushed me. Yes, I told her to leave me alone. When they left, Clara felt empty. Not relieved, not anxious, just hollow, as if the act of recounting had drained something essential from her. Richard had stepped out during the interview. "You should do this alone," he had said, and for once she agreed. Some things required privacy, even from people trying to help. The afternoon passed in a haze of monitoring and medication. Dr. Reyes came by twice, checking the ultrasound, studying the numbers, offering cautious optimism. The abruption was stable. The baby was stable. Every hour without crisis was a small victory. By evening, Clara was alone again. Richard had finally gone to his apartment to handle what he called urgent matters, promising to return in the morning. The nurses came and went on their regular schedule. The corridor grew quiet as night settled over the hospital. Clara tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop. She thought about Garrett, who hadn't called or texted since walking out of her room. She thought about Vanessa, barricaded somewhere with lawyers and publicists constructing her defense. She thought about the baby, growing inside her, unaware of the chaos surrounding his arrival. She thought about her mother, and what Elena would say if she could see her now. "Get up, mi hija. You don't stay down. You never stay down." The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. when the door opened softly. Clara's heart jumped, a reflex she couldn't control, the fear response that Vanessa had planted in her. But it wasn't a threat. It was Dr. Reyes, still in his scrubs, looking like a man who had forgotten what sleep felt like. "I saw your light on again," he said quietly. "Mind if I sit?" Clara shook her head, gesturing to the chair by the window. He sank into it with a heaviness that suggested his body was running on reserves he didn't have. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable in a way Clara hadn't expected. "Bad night?" she asked finally. "Lost a patient." His voice was flat. "Placental abruption, full separation. By the time she got to us, there was nothing we could do." Clara's hand moved instinctively to her belly. "The baby?" "Didn't make it either." Dr. Reyes stared at the floor. 28 weeks, a little girl. Her mother was 23 years old, first pregnancy. The weight of his words settled over the room like a physical presence. Clara thought about the green line on her monitor, the steady tum-tum-tum-tum that had become her lifeline. How easily that could have been her story. "I'm sorry," she said. "It happens." The words came out automatic, rehearsed. The shield of a man who had learned to compartmentalize. In this job, you learn to accept that you can't save everyone. You do everything right, and sometimes it's still not enough. "Is that why you're here? Checking on me?" He looked up, and something vulnerable flickered behind his professional mask. "Partly. After nights like this, I need to...
I need to remember why I do this. I need to see someone who's going to make it. You don't know that I'm going to make it. No, he admitted, etched into his features, the slight tremor in his hands, the way he held himself, as if trying to keep all the broken pieces from scattering. How do you do it? She asked. How do you go home after a night like this and come back the next day? Dr. Reyes was quiet for a long moment. My wife asked me the same question once, he said, before she became my ex-wife. She said she couldn't compete with the hospital, with the patients, with the ghosts I carried home. She was right. I didn't know how to leave this at the door. Is that why you got divorced? Part of it.
The other part was that I stopped talking to her. I couldn't explain what this job does to you, the things you see, the decisions you make, the weight of holding lives in your hands. So I stopped trying, and eventually, she stopped asking. Clara recognized something in his words, the slow erosion of connection, the silence that grew until it became a wall. Garrett stopped asking too, she said quietly. I don't know when exactly. Somewhere along the way, he stopped being curious about me, about my day, my thoughts, my fears. I became furniture, something that was just there. You're not furniture. I know that now, but for a long time I believed I was. I believed that being small and quiet and invisible was the price of belonging. She paused. My mother used to say that women in our family had to be twice as strong just to be seen. I thought she meant strong in the loud way, fighting, demanding, taking up space. But maybe she meant this, surviving.
Staying whole when everything tries to break you. Dr. Reyes leaned forward slightly. You are being seen, Clara. Right now. Right here. I see you. The words landed in a place Clara hadn't known was empty. She felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. Why do you care? She asked. I'm just another patient. You must have hundreds of us. I have hundreds of charts, he said. Medical histories, test results, risk assessments. But you, he hesitated, as if crossing a line he had drawn for himself. You're not a chart. You're a person who was hurt by people who should have protected you, and you're still fighting. That matters to me. Clara didn't know how to respond. The intimacy of the moment felt both dangerous and necessary, a human connection in a place designed to be sterile. You should get some sleep, she said finally. You look like you're about to fall over. A small smile crossed his face, the first she had seen from him. Is that your professional opinion? It's my observation, as someone who knows what exhaustion looks like. He stood, stretching muscles that had been cramped too long. At the door, he paused. Clara? Yes? That patient tonight? The one we lost? Her name was Maria. She was a teacher, 1st grade. He swallowed. I'm going to remember her for a long time, but I'm also going to remember you, the one who made it. I haven't made it yet. You will. He said it with a certainty that felt almost like a promise. I don't know how I know, but I do. Then he was gone, and Clara was alone with the beeping monitor and the gray light of approaching dawn. She thought about Maria, 23 years old, a teacher, a life unlived. She thought about her own life, the years she had wasted being small, the love she had given to people who didn't deserve it, the dreams she had deferred until they faded into forgetting. Get up, Mia Fija. You don't stay down. I'm getting up, Mom, she whispered to the empty room. I promise. Tum, 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 tum. The baby's heartbeat answered her. Steady, strong, alive. For 3 days, everything held. Clara's condition stabilized. The abruption remained contained. The baby's vital signs stayed strong. Dr. Reyes cautiously began using words like cautiously optimistic and favorable trajectory. The nurses smiled when they came to check on her. Even Margaret Chen, who seemed constitutionally incapable of excessive optimism, allowed herself a small nod of approval. Richard came every day, staying for hours at a time. They talked, tentatively at first, then with growing ease. He told her about his work, his failed marriages, the son from his second marriage who barely spoke to him. She told her about her childhood, her mother, the years she had spent trying to understand why her father had never wanted her. "I wanted you," he said one afternoon, his voice thick. "I just wanted my old life more. And by the time I realized how wrong that was, it felt too late to fix."
"It's never too late," Clara replied. "It's just harder." She wasn't sure she believed it, but saying it aloud made it feel possible. Garrett had been silent since walking out. His lawyer had sent papers, a formal separation agreement, hastily drafted, offering Clara a generous settlement in exchange for her discretion. She hadn't signed them. She hadn't even read them all the way through. Vanessa, according to news reports that Richard carefully filtered, had retained a crisis PR firm and was mounting a quiet campaign to rehabilitate her image. No public statements, but strategic leaks to sympathetic journalists. The narrative she was pushing, a woman scorned, driven to a momentary lapse by years of emotional abuse from the Ashford family. The police investigation continued. The DA was reviewing the evidence. Helen Cartwright's team had submitted their final report, all 127 pages of it, documenting every detail of the incident. Everything was proceeding as it should. And then, on the fourth night, Clara woke to pain. It came suddenly, a sharp, tearing sensation in her abdomen that made her gasp. The monitor beside her began to beep faster, the green lines spiking erratically. Something was wrong. She pressed the call button, her hand shaking. The pain intensified, spreading across her midsection in waves that left her breathless. The door burst open. A nurse she didn't recognize rushed in, followed by another. Their faces registered the readings on the monitor, and Clara watched their expressions shift from routine concern to focused alarm. "Page Dr. Reyes, now. Blood pressure's dropping. Get an ultrasound in here." Clara tried to speak, but the pain had stolen her voice. She could only grip the bed rail and breathe, short, shallow breaths that did nothing to ease the tightening in her chest. Dr. Reyes appeared in what felt like seconds, though it might have been longer. He was wearing street clothes, jeans, a sweater, as if he had been called from home. His face was taut with controlled urgency as he pulled on gloves and moved to her bedside. "Clara, can you hear me? I need you to tell me what you're feeling." "Pain," she managed. "Sharp, getting worse." He pressed gently on her abdomen, and she cried out. His jaw tightened. "Ultrasound, now." The cold gel, the wand, the screen flickering to life with images that made the medical team go silent. Dr. Reyes stared at the monitor for what felt like an eternity. When he turned back to Clara, his expression was grave. "The abruption has progressed," he said, significantly. "We're seeing active bleeding behind the placenta." Clara's heart stopped. "The baby? His heart rate is dropping. We need to act now." The room erupted into motion. Machines were moved, orders were shouted. Someone mentioned operating room, someone else said cesarean, and Clara felt the world narrowing to a single terrifying point. "It's too early," she whispered. "He's only 32 weeks." "I know." Dr. Reyes leaned close, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "But if we don't deliver now, we could lose you both. Do you understand?" Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I need verbal consent, Clara. I need to hear you say it." "Do it," her voice cracked. "Save my baby." He squeezed her hand, a brief human gesture amid the clinical urgency, and then he was gone, barking orders, directing the team. Clara felt the bed begin to move. The ceiling tiles blurred past as they rushed her towards the operating room. Faces appeared and disappeared above her. Nurses, technicians, strangers whose names she would never know. Someone placed an oxygen mask over her face. Someone else started an IV line. The pain was receding now, replaced by a strange numbness that she vaguely recognized as medication. "You're doing great, Clara. Just breathe." She tried to focus on the voice, but it was fading. Everything was fading. The lights, the sounds, the terror that had gripped her moments before. "Save him," she thought. "Please, please save him."
The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was Dr. Reyes, standing in the operating room doorway, pulling on surgical scrubs. His lips moved, but she couldn't hear the words. And then there was nothing. When Clara opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was light, soft golden light, filtering through blinds that someone had half opened. The room was different, larger than her previous one, quieter. Medical equipment surrounded her, but the urgent beeping had been replaced by slow, rhythmic sounds. She was alive. That thought came first, followed immediately by another, more desperate one. The baby. She tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate. Pain, dull and distant, cushioned by whatever medication they had given her, radiated from her midsection. Clara, Richard's voice. She turned her head and found him sitting beside the bed, looking more exhausted than she had ever seen him. His suit was wrinkled, his tie was gone. There were tears on his cheeks. "The baby," she whispered. "Where's my baby?" Richard stood, moving closer. He took her hand in both of his, and the gesture was so tender, so uncharacteristically vulnerable, that Clara felt her heart seize. "He's alive," Richard said. "Clara, listen to me. He's alive." The relief that flooded through her was almost painful. She felt herself sobbing before she realized she had started. "He's in the NICU," Richard continued. "He's small, just under 4 pounds, but he's breathing on his own. The doctors say his vitals are strong. I need to see him. You will, soon. But you just had major surgery. You need to rest." Clara shook her head, even though the motion sent pain rippling through her body. "I need to see him now." Richard looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll get the nurse." 20 minutes later, Clara was in a wheelchair, Richard pushing her slowly down the corridor toward the NICU. Every bump sent shockwaves through her abdomen, but she didn't care. Nothing mattered except reaching her son. The NICU was a world of soft sounds and blue light. Incubators lined the walls, each one containing a tiny life fighting for survival. Monitors beeped. Nurses moved with quiet efficiency. And there, in the corner, in an incubator labeled Baby Boy Ashford, was her son. He was impossibly small. His skin was red and translucent. Wires connected him to machines that tracked every breath, every heartbeat. A tiny tube helped him breathe. His eyes were closed, his fingers curled into fists no bigger than walnuts. Clara pressed her hand against the incubator's clear wall. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "I'm here. I'm right here." He didn't respond, couldn't respond. But somewhere in the depths of his tiny body, his heart continued to beat. Tum, tum, tum.
Clara felt Richard's hand on her shoulder. "He looks like you," he said quietly. "Something about the shape of his face. He looks like a fighter." Clara nodded, unable to speak. The tears were coming again. But these were different. Not fear, not pain. Hope. Fragile, desperate hope. "I'm going to name him Noah," she said finally, "because he was born from troubled waters, and he's going to survive." Richard squeezed her shoulder. "Noah, it's perfect." They stayed there for a long time, watching the tiny rise and fall of Noah's chest. Outside the NICU windows, the city carried on. Cars honked, people rushed to meetings, to dinners, to lives that seemed impossibly normal. But in that quiet room, beneath the blue lights and the soft beeping of machines, Clara Ashford began to believe, for the first time in a very long time, that she might actually be okay. The world outside the NICU continued to turn.
Clara spent hours each day beside Noah's incubator, her hand pressed against the clear plastic, watching the tiny rise and fall of his chest. The nurses taught her how to read the monitors, which numbers meant progress, which meant concern. She learned the rhythm of his care, feeding times, temperature checks, the careful adjustments to his oxygen levels. He was fighting. Every hour, every day, he was fighting. On the 5th day after his birth, Margaret Chen appeared at the door of the NICU with an expression Clara had come to recognize. News. Not medical news, something else. "There is someone here to see you," Margaret said quietly. "Helen Cartwright. She says it's important." Clara looked at Noah, still sleeping, still stable, and nodded. "Can you stay with him?" "Of course." Clara made her way slowly to the family consultation room, her body still protesting each movement. The cesarean incision pulled with every step, a constant reminder of how close she had come to losing everything.
Helen was waiting inside, along with a woman Clara didn't recognize, younger, sharp-eyed, carrying a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Ashford," Helen gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. This is Detective Rodriguez. You met her during your initial statement." Clara remembered the careful questions, the still images from the security footage. She lowered herself into the chair, wincing slightly. "How's the baby?" Detective Rodriguez asked. "Stable, getting stronger every day." "I'm glad to hear it." The detective opened her briefcase and withdrew a folder. "I'm here because there have been developments in the investigation. We wanted you to hear them directly before anything becomes public." Clara's pulse quickened. What kind of developments? Detective Rodriguez laid several photographs on the table. Clara recognized them immediately. Stills from the hospital security footage. Vanessa approaching. Vanessa speaking. Vanessa's hand on Clara's shoulder. The push. The fall. "The district attorney has reviewed all the evidence," Rodriguez said. "The security footage, the witness statements, the medical reports documenting your injuries and your son's premature birth. Based on the totality of evidence, formal charges have been filed against Vanessa Monroe." Clara felt the words land somewhere deep in her chest. Formal charges. After everything, the attack, the terror, the emergency surgery, the weeks of watching her son fight for his life, the system was actually responding. "What charges?" she asked. "Assault in the 3rd degree? Reckless endangerment. The endangerment charge is significant. It accounts for the harm caused to your pregnancy." Rodriguez paused. "Given the circumstances, the DA is not offering a standard plea arrangement. Ms. Monroe will face trial unless she accepts responsibility for her actions." Helen leaned forward. "There's more. Ms. Monroe's attorneys have been in contact with the hospital's legal team. They've been attempting to negotiate a settlement, a financial payment in exchange for the hospital dropping its cooperation with the criminal investigation." Clara stared at her. "Can they do that?" "They can try. We refused." Helen's voice was firm. "The hospital's position is clear. An assault occurred on our property, resulting in serious harm to a patient. Our documentation has been submitted to law enforcement. We will not participate in any effort to suppress or minimize what happened." Something released in Clara's chest, a tension she hadn't realized she was carrying. She had expected institutions to fail her, expected money and connections to make the truth disappear. But here was Helen Cartwright, Director of Risk Management, telling her that the system was working. "What happens now?" Clara asked. "Ms. Monroe has been formally arrested and processed," Rodriguez said. "She posted bail within hours, $50,000. She's required to surrender her passport and remain within the state. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for next month. And if she's convicted? Assault 3 carries up to 1 year, reckless endangerment up to 4 years. Given the circumstances, the victim's pregnancy, the severity of the medical consequences, the premeditated nature of the confrontation, the DA will be pushing for consecutive sentences." Clara absorbed this. Up to 5 years, for pushing a pregnant woman in a hospital waiting room, for the cascade of consequences that followed, the abruption, the emergency surgery, the premature birth, the weeks of NICU care. It didn't feel like enough. Nothing would feel like enough. But it was something. It was accountability. "There's one more thing," Rodriguez said. She withdrew another document from her folder. "During our investigation, we subpoenaed phone records and financial transactions. We found evidence that Miss Monroe had been in contact with your husband throughout the day of the incident. Multiple calls and texts in the hours before she arrived at the hospital." Clara's blood went cold. What kind of contact?
Logistical, mostly. She asked him about your appointment time. He provided it. Rodriguez's expression was carefully neutral. There's no evidence that your husband knew about her intentions, but he did provide information that allowed her to find you. The room seemed to tilt. Clara gripped the edge of the table. Garrett had told Vanessa where she would be, when she would be there, alone and vulnerable and waiting. Does he know? Clara's voice came out strange, distant. That you found this. He's been notified. His attorney is claiming he had no knowledge of her plans and cannot be held responsible for her actions. Rodriguez paused. Legally, that's probably true. He won't face criminal charges, but you should know the full picture. Clara nodded slowly. The full picture. Her husband providing her location to his mistress.
His mistress, using that information to find her and attack her. And Garrett, unreachable for hours afterward, claiming his phone was on silent. "Thank you," she said, "for telling me." Rodriguez gathered her documents. "The DA's office will be in touch about the preliminary hearing. You may be asked to testify. Is that something you're willing to do?" Clara thought about Noah, fighting in his incubator, about the terror of those moments on the waiting room floor, about the emergency surgery, the fear, the weeks of uncertainty. "Yes," she said, "I'll testify." After they left, Clara sat alone in the consultation room for a long time. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang. She thought about Garrett, about the man she had married, the life she had tried to build, about all the warning signs she had ignored, all the excuses she had made. He hadn't pushed her. He hadn't been in that waiting room. But he had opened the door and let the monster through. Some betrayals were loud, violent hands, shouted words, broken glass. Others were quiet, a text message, an appointment time, a door left unlocked for someone who meant harm. Both kinds destroyed trust just the same. Clara pulled out her phone and stared at Garrett's contact information for a long moment. Then she opened a new message to her attorney. "I've made a decision about the separation agreement. Let's talk." She pressed send and returned to her son. 2 weeks passed. Noah grew stronger. His weight climbed ounce by ounce, 4 pounds, then 4.5, then 5. The oxygen support was gradually reduced. His eyes opened for longer periods, tracking movement, responding to sound. The nurses said he was a fighter. Clara already knew. She spent every possible moment in the NICU, learning to hold him against her skin, to feed him through the tiny tube that supplemented what he couldn't yet manage on his own. The first time he latched properly, she cried for 20 minutes. Richard came every day. Sometimes he sat with her in the NICU, watching Noah through the incubator walls. Other times he waited in the family room, handling phone calls and logistics, shielding her from the outside world's demands. They talked more now, real conversations, not just careful exchanges. He told her about his childhood, the pressure of family expectations, the father who demanded perfection and punished anything less. She told him about growing up without him, the questions she had carried, the stories her mother had told, the hole that his absence had left. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something like understanding. "I used to imagine you'd come to my birthday parties," she said one afternoon, watching Noah sleep. "I'd set an extra place at the table. Mom never said anything, but I could tell it made her sad." Richard was silent for a long moment. "I sent a card once, when you turned 7, with a check inside. I thought..." He stopped, shook his head. "I don't know what I thought. That money could substitute for presents, that you wouldn't notice the difference." "I noticed. I know. I'm sorry." The words were inadequate. Both of them knew it, but they were also a beginning. Garrett's attorney had responded to Clara's message with a counterproposal, a more generous settlement, immediate finalization of the divorce, full custody of Noah to Clara with no visitation requirements. It was, Clara understood,
a man trying to make a clean exit, to pay his way out of the wreckage he had helped create. She hadn't decided yet whether to accept. Dr. Reyes continued his rounds, checking on Noah's progress, updating Clara on medical developments. Their conversations had shifted, no longer purely clinical, not yet something else entirely. He asked about her recovery, she asked about his work.
They talked about small things, books they had read, places they had visited, the way the city looked different from hospital windows. "You should get some air," he said one evening, finding her in her usual spot beside Noah's incubator. "You've been inside for weeks, so small still, so fragile, but undeniably stronger than he had been." The monitors showed steady numbers. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat. "Maybe tomorrow," she said. Dr. Reyes nodded, but there was something in his expression, concern that went beyond the professional. "Clara." He pulled up a chair and sat beside her, closer than he usually allowed himself. "I've seen a lot of mothers in this unit, the ones who burn themselves out trying to be perfect, trying to control everything. They're not helping their babies. They're just wearing themselves down until they break." "I'm not going to break. You almost did. You had major surgery 3 weeks ago. Your body is still healing. Your mind is processing trauma." He paused. "You don't have to be superhuman. You just have to be present, and you can't be present if you collapse." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. She was so tired, tired of being strong, tired of holding everything together, tired of the constant vigilance that had become her entire existence. "I don't know how to stop," she admitted. "If I stop, if I let go for even a minute, the world doesn't end. Noah doesn't disappear. You just rest, and then you come back stronger." She looked at him, really looked, past the white coat and the professional demeanor to the person underneath, the man who had sat with her at 3 a.m., who had saved her son's life, who kept showing up in ways that went beyond medical obligation. "Why do you care so much?" she asked. "About me specifically?" "I know you have other patients." Dr. Reyes was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "Because you remind me of someone," he said. "Someone I couldn't save. Someone who deserved better than what the world gave her." Clara waited. "My sister." He swallowed. "She was in a situation, an abusive relationship. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't push hard enough, didn't intervene when I should have. And then one day..." He stopped, looked away. "I'm sorry," Clara said quietly. "It was 10 years ago. I've done a lot of therapy, a lot of work, but some things you carry. And when I see a woman who's been hurt by people who should have protected her," he met her eyes again, "I can't not try to help. I can't stand by and watch it happen again." Clara reached out and touched his hand. It was a small gesture, probably inappropriate, definitely crossing some line that existed between doctor and patient, but it felt necessary. "You did help," she said. "You saved my son. You saved me. You saved yourself. I just helped with the medical part." They sat there for a moment, hands touching, something unspoken hanging in the air between them. Then Dr. Reyes stood, gently withdrawing. "Get some rest," he said. "That's a medical order." "Yes, doctor." He smiled, a real smile, the first she had seen that reached his eyes, and left. Clara turned back to Noah. His monitor beeped its steady rhythm. Tum, 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 tum. "Things are changing," she whispered to him. "I don't know what's coming next, but I think it might be okay." Noah's tiny hand twitched in his sleep, as if in response. Clara smiled and let herself believe. The preliminary hearing was held on a Tuesday. Clara didn't attend. Her attorney had advised against it, and the DA's office agreed that her testimony would be more impactful at trial. But Richard went, sitting in the gallery with Lucas, watching as Vanessa Monroe stood before a judge and heard the charges read aloud. Assault in the 3rd degree, reckless endangerment. Clara waited in the hospital, Noah in her arms for the first time without any wires attached.
He had graduated from the incubator that morning, 6 pounds now, breathing entirely on his own, his eyes open and alert. The nurses had cried, Clara had cried, even Richard, calling from the courthouse, had sounded suspiciously hoarse. She didn't show any emotion, he reported afterward, stood there in her designer suit, looking at the judge like she was enduring an inconvenience. Her attorney entered a not guilty plea. So there will be a trial? Unless she accepts a plea deal. The DA is offering one. Guilty on both charges, 18 months with possibility of parole after 12. Her attorney is advising her to take it. Clara looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully against her chest. Will she? I don't know, but the evidence is overwhelming. If she goes to trial and loses, she's looking at much worse. It wasn't the dramatic courtroom confrontation Clara had sometimes imagined in her darker moments. There would be no tearful confession, no public humiliation, no moment of cinematic justice, just the slow, grinding machinery of the legal system, processing evidence and arguments and reaching a conclusion. But it was enough. 3 days later, Vanessa Monroe accepted the plea deal. Guilty on both counts, 18 months in a minimum security facility, 5 years of probation afterward, a permanent restraining order prohibiting any contact with Clara, Noah, or any member of the Ashford family. The news barely made a ripple in the media, a small item in the legal notices, a brief mention in a gossip column that had once breathlessly covered her every move. The woman who had once wielded social power like a weapon was now just another defendant, another case number, another file in the system. Clara read about it on her phone while Noah slept. She expected to feel triumph, or at least satisfaction. Instead, she felt mostly tired. It's over, she said to Richard, who had come straight from a meeting when he heard the news. She pled guilty. I know, Lucas called me. 18 months, that's all. Richard sat down heavily in the chair beside her bed. Is it enough? Clara considered the question. 18 months for the terror in that waiting room, for the fall, the blood, the emergency surgery, for Noah's premature birth, his weeks in the NICU, the scars that would remain long after the physical wounds healed. No, it wasn't enough. Nothing would be enough. But it was what the system had provided, and more importantly, it was acknowledgement. Official, documented, undeniable acknowledgement that what Vanessa had done was wrong. It's enough to move forward, Clara said finally. That's what matters now. The divorce papers had been signed the week before. Garrett had accepted her counterterms without argument. Full custody, the apartment in her name, a settlement that would ensure she and Noah were financially secure for years. In exchange, Clara had agreed to keep certain details private, not to protect Garrett, but to protect herself and Noah from the circus that would follow if every sordid detail became public. She hadn't spoken to Garrett since the night he walked out of her hospital room, didn't plan to. Some chapters needed to close completely before new ones could begin. What will you do now? Richard asked, when Noah is ready to go home. Clara looked around the hospital room that had been her world for so many weeks. The monitors she had learned to read, the chair where Richard sat every day. The window that looked out over a city that had once felt hostile and was slowly beginning to feel like possibility. I have the apartment, she said. Garrett's name is off the deed. It's mine now. Mine and Noah's. We'll go there, I suppose. Start figuring out what normal looks like. And then? I don't know yet. She smiled slightly. I spent so many years planning around other people. Garrett's career, Garrett's family, Garrett's expectations. I don't actually know what I want for myself. Maybe that's the first thing to figure out. Maybe. Richard leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I want to help. Not in a controlling way. Not trying to make up for lost time or buy back what I threw away. Just help. If you need it. If you want it. Clara studied her father, this complicated man who had abandoned her and then returned, who was awkward with affection but showed up every day, who had sat in courtrooms and waiting rooms and NICU observation areas because he didn't know any other way to prove he had changed. "I want to take it slow," she said. "The relationship, I mean. I can't just pretend 27 years didn't happen." "I'm not asking you to pretend anything." "I know, but I need you to understand. Trust takes time, and you're starting from pretty far behind." Richard nodded slowly. "I can work with that. And I need you to respect boundaries. If I say I need space, I need you to give it. If I say something is too much, I need you to back off. I can do that. And I need—" Clara's voice caught. She hadn't planned to say this, but it came out anyway. "I need you to stay, even when it's hard, even when I'm angry or distant or don't want to talk. I need you to not disappear again." Richard's eyes glistened. "I'm not going anywhere, Clara, I promise." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door, left slightly open. The hospital discharge came a week later. Noah was 7 pounds, healthy, thriving. The pediatric team pronounced him a miracle, a 32-week preemie who had fought through every complication and emerged stronger. Clara signed the discharge papers with hands that trembled only slightly. Dr. Reyes appeared as she was packing the last of her things. He was off duty, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of scrubs, looking more like a regular person than the medical authority who had saved her life. "I heard you're leaving today," he said. "Finally," Clara smiled. "I never thought I'd be so happy to see the outside of a building. You'll need to follow up with your OB in 2 weeks, and Noah should see his pediatrician within 72 hours. I'll send the referrals to your records. Thank you for everything." He nodded, but didn't leave. There was something else. Clara could see it in the way he stood, the slight tension in his shoulders. "I wanted to—" He stopped, started again. "This is probably inappropriate, but I've been thinking about what you said, about what comes next, about figuring out what you want for yourself." Clara waited. "When you're settled, when things are calmer, I wondered if you might like to get coffee sometime, not as a doctor and patient, just as—" He trailed off, looking genuinely uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. Clara thought about all the reasons to say no. The timing was wrong, she was freshly divorced, still healing, just beginning to rebuild her life. The last thing she needed was another complication. But she also thought about the man who had sat with her at 3 a.m., who had told her about his sister, his divorce, his own broken pieces, who had seen her at her most vulnerable and had never once made her feel small. "I'd like that," she said, "but not yet. I need time to—" "I understand," he smiled, and it was warm, patient, unhurried. "There's no pressure, no timeline. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here." He handed her a card with his personal number written on the back, in case of non-medical emergencies. Clara tucked it into her pocket. "Thank you, Daniel." It was the first time she had used his first name. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, pleasure, hope. "Take care of yourself, Clara, and that beautiful boy." He left, and Clara finished packing. Richard arrived with a car seat he had purchased himself, top of the line, of course, installed by a professional, checked 3 times for safety. Clara rolled her eyes but let him carry it. They walked out of Lennox Metropolitan Hospital into a crisp autumn afternoon. The sun was bright, the air was clean, and somewhere in the city, a church bell was ringing. Clara paused on the sidewalk, Noah secure in her arms, and looked back at the building where so much had changed. "Ready?" Richard asked. Clara thought about everything that had happened within those walls, the terror and the hope, the pain and the healing, the people who had hurt her, and the people who had helped her find her way back. She thought about the woman she had been, invisible, afraid, making herself small to fit into spaces that were never built for her. And she thought about the woman she was becoming, still uncertain, still scarred, but standing in the sunlight with her son in her arms and a future that belonged to her. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." They walked to the car together, and Clara didn't look back again. 3 months later, Spring arrived in Manhattan. The city softened in ways Clara had forgotten were possible. Trees along her Brooklyn street burst into pale green, window boxes filled with flowers. The air lost its winter bite and became something almost gentle. Noah was 4 months old now, and he was perfect. He had his grandmother's eyes, dark and knowing, the kind that seemed to see more than they should. His hair was coming in soft and dark. He smiled when Clara sang to him, reached for her face when she held him close, slept through the night more often than not. The apartment had become theirs completely. Clara had repainted the bedroom, replaced the furniture that held too many memories, filled the shelves with books she actually wanted to read. The space that had once felt like a cage now felt like a sanctuary. She had started working again, remotely, part-time, consulting for an educational nonprofit that didn't care about her complicated past. The money wasn't much, but it was hers, earned, not given. That mattered more than she had expected. Richard came for dinner every Sunday. It had started awkwardly, stilted conversations, long silences, the strange formality of two people who shared blood, but not history. But slowly, week by week, something had shifted. He learned how she took her coffee. She learned about his childhood, the father who had demanded perfection, the mother who had looked away. They talked about Elena, the woman Richard had loved and left, the woman who had raised Clara alone and never once spoken of him with bitterness. She was extraordinary, Richard said one evening, watching Clara feed Noah. I knew it then. I was just too afraid to deserve her. She would have forgiven you, Clara said. Eventually, she wasn't someone who held on to anger. What about you? Clara considered the question. Forgiveness was a word people used too easily, she had learned, as if it were a single moment, a switch to be flipped. In reality, it was a process. Layers of hurt peeled back slowly, examined, released. I'm working on it, she said. Some days are easier than others. Richard nodded. He didn't push. He had learned not to push. The legal aftermath had settled into something manageable. Vanessa was 6 months into her 18-month sentence, apparently a model prisoner, already petitioning for early release. Clara received updates from the DA's office, mandatory notifications that she filed away without reading. Vanessa's fate no longer occupied space in her mind. There were more important things to focus on. Garrett had moved to Los Angeles. A fresh start, his attorney had explained, as if geography could erase what he had done. Clara didn't care where he went, as long as he stayed away. The divorce was final. The settlement was deposited. Noah's birth certificate listed only her name. Some wounds healed, others simply scarred over. Clara was learning to tell the difference. The call from Daniel came on a Thursday afternoon. Clara was in the park near her apartment, Noah in his stroller, watching the pigeons scatter and regroup. Her phone buzzed, and she saw his name on the screen, the first time he had contacted her since giving her his card 3 months ago. Hi, she said. Hi. His voice was warm, a little uncertain. I wasn't sure if you'd answer. I almost didn't. I've been staring at your number for 3 months, trying to decide if I was ready. And are you? Ready? Clara looked at Noah, who was watching a dog walk past with the intense focus of someone discovering the world for the first time. I think so, she said. Maybe. I'm not sure what ready even means anymore. It means whatever you want it to mean. There's no test, no threshold you have to cross. He paused. I just wanted to hear your voice, to know you're okay. I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. She searched for the right word. I'm building something, a life that feels like mine. That's all I wanted to hear. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who had time, who didn't need to rush toward anything. That coffee, Clara said finally. Is the offer still open? Always. Saturday. There's a place near my apartment.
They have a garden in the back. Noah likes watching the birds. Saturday works. She could hear him smiling through the phone. I'll be there. Helen Cartwright called a week later with unexpected news. The hospital board has approved a new initiative, she said. A comprehensive maternal safety program, additional security, staff training, patient advocacy protocols. We're calling it the Safe Beginnings Project. Clara listened, confused about why she was being told this. We'd like to name one component after you, Helen continued. The Clara Ashford Patient Advocacy Fund. It would provide resources for women who experience violence during pregnancy, counseling, legal aid, emergency support. Clara's throat tightened.
I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. But what happened to you, it changed things here. It forced us to look at gaps we had ignored. This is a way of making sure other women don't fall through those gaps. It's not going to be some big public thing, is it? A gala or a press conference? No, just a plaque in the OB wing. A fund that helps people quietly, the way real change usually happens. Clara thought about all the women who would come through Lennox Metropolitan in the years ahead. The ones who were afraid, alone, facing dangers both seen and unseen. If something she had endured could help even one of them. Okay, she said. Yes, I'd be honored. Saturday arrived, bright and warm. Clara dressed carefully, not to impress, but to feel like herself. A simple sundress, comfortable shoes. Noah in a blue onesie with tiny elephants that Richard had chosen with surprising thoughtfulness.
Daniel was already at the cafe when she arrived, sitting at a table in the garden, 2 cups of coffee waiting. He stood when he saw her, and something in his expression made Clara's heart skip, not from nervousness, but from recognition, the look of someone seeing something precious. You look good, he said. Healthy. I feel healthy, for the first time in a long time. They sat. Noah examined Daniel with the suspicious intensity of a baby evaluating a new person, then apparently decided he passed muster and returned to chewing on his stuffed giraffe. So, Daniel said, here we are. Here we are. I have to admit, I rehearsed about 15 different conversation starters on the way here, and now I can't remember a single one. Clara laughed, a real laugh, unguarded. That's okay. I couldn't remember mine either. Maybe we should start simple. How are you, Clara? Really? She considered the question seriously, the way it deserved. I'm rebuilding, she said, piece by piece. Some days it feels impossible, like I'll never get past what happened, like I'll always be that woman on the waiting room floor. But most days it feels like I'm becoming someone new, someone I haven't met yet. That sounds healthy. It feels terrifying mostly, but good terrifying, like jumping off a diving board instead of falling off a cliff. Daniel smiled. I know that feeling. After my divorce, after everything with my sister, I felt like I was starting from zero, like everything I thought I knew about myself had been wrong. What helped? Time, work, therapy. He paused. And eventually learning to believe that I deserved good things, that happiness wasn't something I had to earn or justify. It was just allowed. Clara looked at him, this man who had seen her at her worst and never flinched, who had sat with her in the darkness and helped her find her way back to light. I'm not ready for anything serious, she said carefully. I need you to know that. I'm still figuring out who I am without being someone's wife, someone's disappointment, someone's victim. I understand. But I'd like to keep doing this. Coffee, conversation, getting to know each other without any pressure or expectations. Daniel reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The touch was gentle, respectful, asking nothing except to be present. I'd like that too, he said. No one made a sound that might have been approval or might have been gasp. Either way, it broke the tension, and they both laughed. He's beautiful, Daniel said. He looks like you. He looks like my mother, actually. My father pointed it out. The eyes. Your father? Richard? How is that going? Complicated. Good, I think. We're learning each other. Clara watched a bird hop along the garden fence. He's not who I thought he was. Or maybe he is, but he's also someone else. Someone who's trying. That's all any of us can do, really. Try. They talked for 2 hours.
About everything. About nothing. About Clara's work with the nonprofit. About Daniel's research into new prenatal monitoring techniques. About books they'd read, movies they hadn't seen. The particular exhaustion of being responsible for a tiny human who couldn't tell you what they needed. When they finally parted, Daniel walked her to the edge of the park. "Same time next week?" he asked. "Same time next week?" He leaned in, hesitated, then kissed her gently on the cheek. "Take care, Clara. You too." She watched him walk away, then turned the stroller toward home. The sun was warm on her face. Noah was making happy sounds at the passing scenery. Somewhere in the distance, a street musician was playing something soft and hopeful. Clara smiled. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. There were still hard days ahead. Grief she hadn't fully processed. Anger that surfaced at unexpected moments. The long work of becoming whole. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, she was walking towards something instead of away from something. That made all the difference. 6 months later, Clara stood at the window of her apartment, watching the sun rise over Brooklyn. Noah was asleep in his crib, finally, after a night of teething-related protests that had left them both exhausted. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of a refrigerator and the distant sound of early traffic. In this stillness, in this pale golden light, Clara allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten existed. Peace. It had come slowly, in pieces, not the dramatic resolution of movie endings, where pain disappeared in a single cathartic moment, but something quieter, more sustainable. The daily accumulation of small victories, a full night's sleep, a conversation with Richard that didn't end in awkward silence, a text from Daniel that made her smile for no reason she could explain. She had learned to live inside her own life again. The Clara who had sat in that hospital waiting room 18 months ago felt like a different person now, someone she knew intimately, but no longer was. That Clara had been afraid of her own voice, her own needs, her own existence, had made herself small to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. This Clara, the one watching the sunrise with coffee in her hands, had edges, boundaries, opinions she wasn't afraid to express. She had learned that being soft didn't mean being weak, and being strong didn't mean being hard. She had learned that survival was just the beginning. Richard arrived at 9, as he did every Sunday, carrying bagels and the particular brand of cream cheese Clara had mentioned liking once, months ago. He remembered things like that now, small details, preferences, the texture of her daily life. It was his way of showing up, of proving that presence mattered more than grand gestures. "He's still sleeping?" Richard asked, peering into the nursery. "Finally. It was a long night." "You should have called. I would have come over." "At 3 a.m.? "At any hour." He said it simply, without drama. A fact, not a plea. Clara smiled. "I know, and joggers, parents pushing strollers, the ordinary choreography of lives in motion." "I have news," Richard said, setting down his coffee, "about Vanessa." Clara's stomach tightened, an automatic response she hadn't fully trained away. "What about her?" "She was released last week, early, for good behavior." He watched her carefully. "She's left New York, moved to Florida, apparently. Her attorney sent a notice to the DA's office." Clara absorbed this. Released, free, somewhere in the world, living her life as if nothing had happened. She waited for the anger to come, the sense of injustice, the familiar burn of resentment. But it didn't arrive. Instead, there was only a kind of tired acknowledgement, like noting a change in the weather. "Good," she said finally. Richard's eyebrows rose. "Good. Good that she's gone. Good that she's somewhere else. I don't want to spend any more energy thinking about her. She's not part of my story anymore." "That's very evolved of you." Clara laughed. "I've been in therapy. Turns out it helps." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Richard spoke again. "I've been thinking about something. A proposal, if you're open to it." "I'm listening." "I'd like to set up a trust for Noah, For his education, his future. Nothing controlling. You'd have full authority over how it's used. I just want to make sure he has options, that he never has to limit his choices because of money. Clara had expected this eventually. Richard's way of expressing love had always been financial. It was the language he knew best. But something was different this time. There was no suggestion that money could replace time, no implication that a check could cover the cost of absence. "Okay," she said, "on one condition." "Name it." "You have to be there too, not just your money, you, at his soccer games, his school plays, his graduations. The trust is nice, but what he needs most is a grandfather who shows up." Richard's eyes glistened. "I can do that." "I know you can. That's why I said yes." They finished breakfast as Noah began to stir, his morning sounds floating through the apartment like small announcements of joy. Daniel came by that afternoon. Their relationship had grown slowly, carefully, like a plant neither wanted to damage by overwatering. Coffee dates had become dinners. Dinners had become weekend afternoons in the park. He had met Richard, survived the protective scrutiny, emerged as someone even Clara's father grudgingly approved of. They hadn't defined what they were yet. Labels felt too rigid for something still finding its shape. But Clara knew what she felt, a warmth that was different from the desperate attachment of her marriage, different from the emptiness that had preceded it. This was quieter, steadier, a choice rather than a need. "I brought you something," Daniel said, handing her a small wrapped package. Clara opened it carefully. Inside was a book, a collection of essays about motherhood, written by women who had survived difficult things. "I saw it in a bookstore and thought of you," he said. "You don't have to read it. I love it." She held the book against her chest. "Thank you." Noah, who had been practicing his newest skill of standing while holding onto furniture, promptly fell over and began to cry. Daniel scooped him up without hesitation, settling the baby against his shoulder with the ease of someone who had spent many afternoons learning the particular rhythms of this particular child. "Hey, buddy, you're okay. Gravity's tough, but you'll figure it out." Clara watched them, the man who had saved her son's life, now bouncing him gently while making ridiculous faces that Noah found hilarious. Something swelled in her chest, too big for words. "Daniel," he looked up, "I think I'm falling in love with you." The words came out before she could stop them, before she could cushion them with caveats or qualifications, just the raw truth offered freely. Daniel's face softened into something beautiful. "I've been in love with you since the night I sat with you at 3 a.m. and you told me about your mother. That long? That long. I was just waiting for you to be ready to hear it." Clara crossed the room and kissed him, properly, fully, for the first time. Noah, sandwiched between them, made a sound of delighted confusion. When they pulled apart, Daniel was grinning. "So what happens now?" "I don't know," Clara admitted. "I've never done this part well. The after. The building's something that lasts." "Neither have I. But I'd like to try, if you would." "I would." That night, after Daniel left and Noah was sleeping, and the apartment settled into its evening quiet, Clara stood at the window again. The city spread before her, millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of stories unfolding simultaneously. Somewhere out there, people were falling in love and falling apart, making mistakes and finding redemption, hurting each other and healing each other in the endless, complicated dance of being human. She thought about the woman she had been 18 months ago, standing in a different room, looking at a different view, waiting for a life to happen to her. That woman had been waiting for rescue from Garrett, from circumstance, from some external force that would finally make her matter. She hadn't understood that rescue was an inside job, that no one could save you if you weren't willing to save yourself. Clara understood now. She had walked through fire and emerged, not unscathed, but transformed. The scars remained, some visible, some hidden,
but they no longer defined her. They were simply evidence of survival, markers of a journey she had made and would continue to make. She thought about her mother, who had been so strong for so long, who had loved Clara fiercely and taught her, by example, that women could bend without breaking. Elena would have been proud of what her daughter had built from the ashes of what had been destroyed. She thought about Richard, asleep in his penthouse across the river, who had finally learned that showing up was the only thing that mattered.
She thought about Daniel, who had walked into her life as a doctor and stayed as something more, who saw her clearly and loved what he saw. And she thought about Noah, perfect and peaceful in his crib, who had no idea yet about the complicated world he had been born into, who only knew warmth and milk and the sound of his mother's voice singing him to sleep. Clara pressed her hand against the cool glass of the window. "We made it," she whispered to the city, to her mother's memory, to herself. "We actually made it." Tomorrow would bring new challenges, teething and toddlerhood, the ongoing negotiation with Richard, the slow deepening of whatever she was building with Daniel. The maternal safety program that now bore her name would help other women walk through their own fires. The life she was constructing would continue to take shape, brick by brick, choice by choice. But tonight, in this moment, there was only gratitude. For the son sleeping in the next room. For the father learning to be present. For the man who had loved her when she couldn't love herself. For the woman she was still becoming. Clara turned from the window and walked through her apartment, in her life, built by her own hands. She paused at Noah's door, listening to the soft rhythm of his breathing. Tum, 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 tum. The sound that had anchored her through the darkest months, the heartbeat that had refused to stop, even when everything else was falling apart. "Good night, my love," she whispered. "Tomorrow, we keep going." She left the door slightly open, a habit she couldn't break, the need to hear him, to know he was safe, and walked to her own room. The bed was soft, the sheets were clean, the ceiling above her held no answers, but she had stopped looking for them there. Clara closed her eyes, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she slept without dreaming of what she had lost. She dreamed instead of what was coming. The morning would arrive, as it always did. The sun would rise over Brooklyn, painting everything in gold and possibility. Noah would wake, demanding attention, demanding love, demanding the simple truth that he was the center of someone's universe. And Clara would be there, present, whole, ready. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because she had learned to carry it. Not because the future was certain, but because she had learned to build it anyway. Not because she had been saved, but because she had finally learned to save herself. The story didn't end here. It was only beginning. The end. If this story touched you in any way, you're not alone. So many of us have carried pain quietly, waited in silence, and learned to survive when we should have been protected. If this story meant something to you, please give it a like. It helps this kind of story reach other women who may need it. And if you feel safe here, subscribe to stay with us for more stories like this. I'd love to know, where are you watching from? And tell me, what part of Clara's story stayed with you the most? Your voice matters here. This is a place to be seen.